This week in Linux, I'm back. And this time, I'm back. Twill is back. This episode is going to have some stuff that happened between now and the previous episode. That was like a month ago. But starting next week, the show is back on a weekly basis. So on this week's episode, we've got some new releases from the Linux kernel with 6.18. We've also got some new distro releases to look at with NixOS, Solus, and more. Then we've got some news from the Raspberry Pi Foundation and also some really cool news that Framework is the first sponsor of LVFS. All of this and more on This Week in Linux, the weekly news show that keeps you up to date with what's going on in the Linux and open source world. That's right, I said weekly because it's back. Now let's jump right into your source for Linux Good News. This episode of Twill is sponsored by Sandfly Security. More on them later. Linux kernel 6.18 has officially been released as a stable version, actually the long-term support version as well. So this is an LTS kernel, and it comes with significant performance and security improvements. 6.18 brings a variety of enhancements for memory management, networking, and next-gen kernel features like signed BPF and more. Key core features and improvements for this release include improved memory management via sheaves in the slab allocator, ability to manage namespaces with file handles, the new ACCECN or ACCECN, which is Accurate Explicit Congestion Notification support, also support for signed BPF programs, and also Rust-built binder driver was introduced in this release. Plus, there's also some networking and performance benefits, so there's better swapping performance, UDP receive improvements have been made in this release, and TCP encryption support with PSP is now included in Linux 6.18, as well as some file system updates, because multiple changes happen to speed up various different existing file systems, including Extended 4, Btrfs, and more. The 6.18 kernel rounds out this release cycle with substantial hardware improvements and also driver support updates. So we have new persistent cache features and new device support across architectures. So hardware and drivers, let's start there. We have updated and new drivers across many different architectures, which benefits GPUs, power management, storage, and embedded boards. And there's also new device mapper pcache target, which allows persistent memory as a cache layer. Then there's a new microcode equals option for x86 microcode loader control, and also improved laptop hardware support, which improves various different components like touchpad haptics, sensors, and many more. And what might be the most unsurprising change for this release is that bcachefs is no longer part of the kernel tree starting with 6.18. There was some starting with that with 6.17, and also, bcachefs is really a highly anticipated file system by some. It has been removed from the official kernel sources starting with this release, and the reason for this removal is due to some development relationship issues. And that's like a nice way to say there's some drama involved here. And we don't need to rehash this here on the show because we already talked about it on the show. So this episode, we're not going to do that. If you want to learn more, I'll have a link in the show notes for the drama around this stuff. But Linux 6.18 LTS is out, and based on the fact that this came out a couple of weeks ago, it's likely already available in some distributions, although others will take a bit more time. And if you'd like to learn more about this release or the drama around it, links in the show notes. Recently, we got some awesome news from Valve, and that they have announced new Steam hardware for 2026. So there's a new Steam machine, a second generation Steam controller, and a Steam Frame VR headset. At the same time, Steam's hardware and software surveys show Linux usage on Steam has hit a new all-time high. So we're going to talk about all of this. First up, let's talk about the hardware. So Valve has officially announced 3 new pieces of hardware aimed at 2026. So starting with the hardware, Valve officially announced 3 new pieces of hardware that is aimed for release in 2026. We have the Steam Machine, which is a Linux-powered living room console/PC, the Steam Controller, which is a redesigned second generation of their Steam controller, and Steam Frame, which is a standalone VR headset. The Steam Machine and Steam Frame are, of course, running SteamOS, so that's awesome. And the exact release date, we don't know. And the retail pricing, we also don't know that part either. But be sure to subscribe, as I will let you know when we do know. So let's talk about the new Steam machine. It's powered by an AMD desktop class CPU and GPU. It will double as a PC, like a Linux-based PC, but not necessarily optimized for that. This is more of a gaming-first console that can also be used as a PC. The Steam machine uses a semi-custom AMD Zen 4-based SoC or system on a chip with RDNA 3 graphics and 16 gigs of RAM and 8 gigs of GDDR6 VRAM. Along with the Steam machine, we also got an announcement for the next generation of the Steam controller. And the Steam controller's layout looks very similar to the Steam Deck controls, just without a screen. I also think it's a great re-envisioning of the controller from the first version. I wasn't really a fan of the first controller. I had one. It was good for some types of games like platformers, but many games I just didn't want to use it because I didn't really like the large touchpads that it had because I prefer thumbsticks, and you were limited in the thumbstick. I think they only had one thumbstick in that. Maybe I don't remember exactly, but I do remember the size of the touchpads were excessive, so I wasn't a big fan of that. And this new one, well, that has a smaller set of touchpads. They're more practical sized, and it's actually very similar to how the Steam Deck works. So I'm very interested in trying out this new controller because it basically looks like they took the Steam Deck, which is a really good feeling controller, and then took the screen out and just made a controller from it. So sounds good to me. And then there's the Steam Frame, which is their lightweight VR headset that is wireless, and also reports say that it's comfortable, which is very important. The Steam Frame is powered by Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 ARM64 SoC or system on a chip with 16 gigs of LPDDR5X RAM and is running, of course, SteamOS, which is awesome to see that it's built into the VR headset and not just connected to the Steam machine through some tethering thing. It's actually built into the Steam Frame. And some more good news is that Steam's recent hardware survey shows that Linux usage on Steam has grown to an all-time high with an increase of 0.15% for just this past month, bringing it up to a total of 3.2%. This marks a trend increase, and with Steam itself growing in overall user base, this is actually even more promising than it already seems, because 3% is a good threshold to hit, so getting higher and higher is better, but getting higher and higher and continuing to grow after the 3%, getting 3.2%, while the Steam overall user base is growing itself, means there's a lot of Linux gamers and also a lot of gamers coming to Linux, and that's awesome. This next bit is not important in any way whatsoever, but Dbrand is known for making skins for various different products and hardware and that sort of thing. And of course, they had to make, because the Steam machine is in the form of a cube sort of thing, they decided to make a companion cube from the game Portal, which is awesome. And I actually don't really want many like skins that for my stuff. I just like to keep it like it's just the standard style. I'm not much of a sticker person or a skin types of person, but I'm very tempted to get this. This looks really fun and kind of ridiculous, but also awesome. So I actually might just get this anyway. But I'm also looking forward to seeing gaming grow with Linux, because that means overall more users, and that means overall improvements for the ecosystem. And of course, I'm looking forward to getting my hands on these new devices because they look awesome. How about you? Let me know in the comments. Richard Hughes, the maintainer of LVFS, has announced on his Mastodon that the company Framework has now become the first OEM to sponsor the Linux Vendor Firmware Service, or LVFS. Now, this is great to see a computer manufacturer directly funding the infrastructure for firmware updates on Linux. But for those who are not familiar exactly with LVFS, it's a service that is used by FWUPD or FWUPD to distribute firmware updates on Linux. So a lot of systems have it built in, like for example, with KDE Plasma, Discover can just do firmware updates for you, and a lot of distros have a firmware stuff. And also there's a Flatpak, which is really cool, that you can just install the Flatpak and easily update your firmware, and all of that is possible by FWUPD and by the LVFS. So the LVFS project is very important, and many vendors rely on LVFS, but most aren't directly funding the project, so that's disappointing. But I'm happy to see that the framework company is sponsoring it financially. They're backing LVFS, and they're first OEM to do it. Hopefully more follow, and hopefully this convinces other companies to start sponsoring the project as well, because LVFS is very important, and it's very vital and crucial to a lot of firmware updates for hardware. So hopefully more companies start backing it as well. As Linux users, we know what's up. Security is non-negotiable, but with threats evolving faster than ever, your security tools need to keep up without dragging your system down. Traditional agents, they slow you down and create stability risks. It's time for a smarter approach, and that's why This Week in Linux is proud to be sponsored by Sandfly Security, the agentless security platform designed for Linux. Sandfly doesn't just detect and respond, it transforms your security strategy with SSH key tracking, password auditing, drift detection, and more, covering threats from every angle. Whether your systems are in the cloud, on-premises, or in embedded devices, Sandfly ensures they're all secure without the headaches of agent-based solutions. If your company is interested in transforming your security strategy, Sandfly also offers free trials to show off what it can do for your business. So visit thisweekinlinux.com/Sandfly. That's thisweekinlinux.com/SANDFLY. And also, listen to what Timothy Lisko, Deputy CISO at DigitalOcean, has to say. Sandfly is one of the most exciting pieces of security tech I've seen recently. We're excited to not only be a customer, but also offer an integrated solution to our customers through the DigitalOcean marketplace. This technology addresses Linux security in a really novel and compelling way. Experience security that's not just effective, it gives you peace of mind also. So no agents, no downtime, just cutting-edge protection. Dive into the future of Linux security at thisweekinlinux.com/Sandfly. That's thisweekinlinux.com/SANDFLY, and see how Sandfly can transform your security strategy. System76 has announced the latest release of their Pop!OS distribution with 24.04 LTS. And now, if for those who are aware of the different numbers and what they mean, you might be wondering, is that based on Ubuntu 24.04 LTS? And if so, why did it take so long to get released? And well, that's actually a good story, because the answer is because this contains the first stable release of the Cosmic Desktop. So it took a lot of time to develop the Cosmic Desktop, and they were doing it kind of in junction with the Pop!OS. So Pop!OS was kind of delayed based on Cosmic, and they wanted to have Cosmic as the default desktop replacing GNOME. So it just took a little bit more time to get to that point, and now Cosmic is included as the default desktop environment for Pop!OS with 24.04 LTS. But I'm very excited to check out Cosmic Desktop, especially with the stable release status that it has now, because this is a really interesting concept of having a traditional style floating window type of desktop, but that also can easily switch back and forth between a tiling desktop. And it's just really interesting, as well as being based on Rust. So it's even super performant and all that sort of stuff. So it's going to be really cool to see how it develops overall. Now that Pop!OS is out and a lot more people can try it, and get, also you can use Cosmic on other distros like Fedora and Arch and etc. So it's going to be interesting to see the development continuing for the Cosmic Desktop, because it is technically a stable release, but it's the very first one. So you're probably should be expecting some bugs here and there. It's not going to be completely ready to go, because, it takes time to get everything polished and everything cleaned up and that sort of thing. So usually when the first release happens of any project, there's still a little bit more to do. But I'm really happy to see that Cosmic Desktop is on its first stable release, and I can't wait to check it out. I mean, I'm giving you a warning that you should know that there's going to be, potentially. I'm still going to try it myself. I still want to try it. I'm not going to wait at all. And I might even make a video on that. So let me know in the comments if you'd like for me to make a video on the first stable release of Cosmic through Pop!OS 24.04 LTS. The lightweight desktop LXQt has a new release with LXQt 2.3. This desktop environment is a long time been like a lightweight go-to. And for those who don't know, it's basically the history of LXDE and then Razor Qt combining together to become LXQt. And that's where this project comes from. And on this release, they have a lot of emphasis on improved support for Wayland. and other interface improvements like brightness, mouse wheel control, file management enhancements, terminal upgrades, and improved Wayland panel support. So let's start with the many improvements for the Wayland support. LXQt panel now supports desktop switching with Wayland compositors like LabWC and Neri. A Wayfire backend has been added for the panel, which expands support for other compositors, and the custom command plugin is now more flexible under both Wayland and X11. And the screen grab functionality now works under Wayland compositors, supporting the WLR screen copy protocol, and also they've improved power management for Wayland sessions. For file management updates, they've added a safely remove option to PCMan FM Qt side panel context menus. They've also added an option for disable file tooltips on the desktop, and they've also done some archiver and terminal improvements. So the LXQt archiver gains LZ4 support. QTerminal adds emoji flag support and a toggle bookmarks action. There's also many bug fixes and improvements under the hood and that sort of thing. And I have a full list of in the changelog linked in the show notes. But that's the wrap up for the LXQt 2.3 release. There's a lot of meaningful steps forward for such a lightweight desktop to be modernizing on the Wayland side of things and refining the everyday experience. So if you'd like to learn more, links in the show notes. The Raspberry Pi Foundation announced, some unfortunate news, but it seems to be going around a lot lately, and that is raised prices on some models for the Raspberry Pi. Now, this is in response to the memory cost pressures and supply constraints, and so because of that, they have raised the prices, but they're also introducing a new option, which will be a lower amount of RAM, but it makes it easier for them to have a relatively inexpensive option still. So the Raspberry Pi 5 is going to have a 1 gigabyte option that'll be $45 USD. So the price increasing is applying to both the Raspberry Pi 4 and the Pi 5 single board computers. So if you want a Pi 4 4 gig, that's going from $55 to $60. The Pi 4 8 gig is going from $75 to $85. The Pi 5 2 gig goes from $50 to $55. 4 gig of Pi 5 will go from $60 to $70. And then the 8 gig is going to go from $80 to $95. And then the 16 gig of the Pi 5 is going from $120 to $145. Now, these price changes are intended to offset rising LPDDR4 memory costs and help secure supply for the future for 2026, because the memory market is going just crazy right now. And the new Raspberry Pi 5 with 1 gigabyte RAM has all the same core hardware like the quad-core 2.4 gigahertz ARM Cortex A76 CPU, dual-band Wi-Fi, and a PCI Express port, and et cetera, et cetera. It's really just the RAM that's different. So that means that the Raspberry Pi 5 family now includes a model with 1 gig, 2 gigs, 4 gigs, 8 gigs, and 16 gigs of RAM. So like I said, the rising cost and constrained supply of LPDDR4 memory is what's making this price increase happen. But they're actually saying it's going to be a temporary situation related to the memory market conditions. So Eben Upton from Raspberry Pi says this, and I quote, "The current pressure on memory prices, driven by competition from the AI infrastructure rollout, is painful but ultimately temporary. We remain committed to driving down the cost of computing and look forward to unwinding these price increases once it abates." So this memory price issue is affecting basically everyone, and every company is making adjustments due to this. And it gets worse because Micron announced an insane thing because they're killing the Crucial consumer brand so they can sell their supply to this AI market, which is honestly incredibly disappointing. Crucial has long been considered a top-tier brand in this space, so to see them end the brand in such a way, I mean, Micron, I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed in you. Now, people said AI is going to change things for the worse, and some of it seemed a bit far-fetched. This was not one of the ways I saw it making changes, and this absolutely is a shame to see. But I get why so many companies are raising their prices because the supply chain is kind of forcing them to. But to Micron and all the companies that are like them, you're being lame, and stop being lame. And I hope none of the other suppliers follow in your lame footsteps. The NixOS team have announced the latest release with NixOS 25.11. For those unfamiliar with NixOS, first, Nix is a tool that takes a unique approach to package management and system configuration to make a reproducible, declarative, and reliable system, which is NixOS. It is a very cool, unique approach to a Linux-based operating system. And if you want to learn more about how it works, I'll have some links for you in the show notes. However, it is not for most people. It's definitely not for beginners. And just keep that in mind. It's a very cool system. It's a very cool concept, but it is not for the average user. And it is absolutely not for beginners. NixOS 25.11 lands a lot of new updates, including some updates to various desktops like GNOME 49, and also the Cosmic Desktop has gone from experimental with the alpha, now with the beta support. Now, technically, this came out a couple of weeks before the stable release of Cosmic, so you're not going to have that necessarily. But with updates in the system, how it works, you possibly could get that, just not in this particular release snapshot. And also, there's new Firewall D support in the latest release of NixOS 25.11. So NixOS follows a 6-month release cadence, and 25.11 was released last month, although at the very end of last month. And in addition to having updates to the GNOME desktop and support for Cosmic, NixOS 25.11 is introducing Firewall D support, which expands the networking firewall configuration options for the system. So this adds an alternative to existing firewall mechanisms inside of NixOS. This release includes package updates also across the entire distribution, and there's a lot of stuff. So let's check out the highlights for the latest release of Xanthuzia. That's probably wrong. That's got to. I doubt I said that right, but I think it's Xanthuzia. Let me know in the comments. And if you do let me know in the comments, try to do it phonetically and not just give me the regular name as if like it's pronounced this. Try to do it phonetically. Anyway, so there's a lot of updates. We're not going to talk about the updates with GNOME itself or Cosmic itself, but there is an update with NixOS in it. So this is a Rust-based bashless initialization system for systemd init RD. This allows to run NixOS systems without any interpreter. So this is actually pretty interesting. And also there's quite a few things, like for example, NixOS-rebuild-ng is a full rewrite of NixOS-rebuild in Python and is enabled by default from this release. So there's a lot of changes. If you'd like to learn more and check out the full changelog, I'll have that linked in the show notes. And yeah, let me know what you think if you do decide to check out NixOS. But keep in mind, again, it's not for beginners. But if you do decide, let me know. The Solus team have announced that the latest release of Solus 4.8 has been released. And for those who are not familiar, this is an independent Linux distribution that is not based on any other distro. And it's a rolling release type of distribution. Solus 4.8 ships with newer Linux kernel. It has updated desktop environments for GNOME and KDE Plasma, and it also comes with refreshed system components. Solus 4.8 includes Linux kernel 6.17. Desktop environments updated in this release include GNOME 49 and KDE Plasma 6.5. These updates apply across Solus editions as well as, the updates for the Solus 4.8 includes the Linux kernel 6.17. Desktop environments that are updated are GNOME 49 and KDE Plasma 6.5. Solus 4.8 serves as a new installation snapshot. So if you already have Solus, then to get the newest version, you just do regular updating because it's a rolling release model, so you don't really have to do that. But if you're brand new to Solus, then Solus 4.8 is where you should start. So that's Solus 4.8, the snapshot release, bringing the latest kernel and desktop updates to the Solus ecosystem. FreeBSD 15.0 has been officially published as the next major release of the FreeBSD operating system. FreeBSD 15 marks a major reversion bump, so bringing architectural changes, setting the direction for the next release cycle for FreeBSD, and many, many things. So it's not like a huge feature-rich type of release, but it is a structural and forward-looking release rather than centered on immediate end-user features. So the project is continuing like long-term efforts around modernization and internal refinements, as well as a lot of hardware improvements for a lot of different stuff, including like the laptop effort they're doing to having FreeBSD supported on more hardware. Also in this release, there's updates to various different tools like OpenZFS, OpenSSL, OpenSSH, and countless other software upgrades. Improvements like a native iNotify implementation and a numerous device driver updates. The FreeBSD on laptops effort has also resulted in many Wi-Fi improvements, graphics driver enhancements, suspend and resume fixes, and many other improvements. And some of the other driver improvements in FreeBSD 15.0 include Intel E800 series networking with ICE driver, Tiger Lake through Meteor Lake support from Intel in different drivers, and the Intel IWX driver for Wi-Fi 6 hardware support. So you may be wondering, why is a show called This Week in Linux talking about FreeBSD? Well, that's because FreeBSD and Linux are kind of like cousins in a way. So I wanted to talk about it because this is a big major milestone release that sets the foundation for what's coming in the next couple of years for the FreeBSD project. And it's just interesting in that sense. However, I get the question and totally understand why you'd ask that. But, you know, FreeBSD and all the BSDs are kind of like cousins, but FreeBSD is probably the most usable in that sense. And also I just wanted to. Thanks for watching this episode, the return of This Week in Linux. If you like what I do here on this show and want to be kept up to date with what's going on in the Linux and open source world, then be sure to subscribe. And of course, remember to like that smash button. If you'd like to support the show and the channel, then consider becoming a patron by going to thisweekinlinux.com/membership, where you can get a bunch of cool perks like access to the patron-only section of our Discord server and so much more. You can also support the show by ordering the Linux is Everywhere t-shirt or the This Week in Linux shirt at tuxdigital.com/store. Plus, while you're there, check out all the other cool stuff we have like hats, mugs, hoodies, and more at tuxdigital.com/store. Now, for those who are new to the show, hi, thanks for watching. This is not for you. But if you are a returning viewer, thank you for being part of the community. Thank you for coming back to the show after I've been gone for a couple months. For those who don't know, I was in a car incident and lots of injuries. I'm still recovering. I have a few more months before I'm actually back to normal, so to speak. But I am happy to be back, and I plan to crank out a lot more content for you trying to make up for the missing couple of months. So yeah, I'll see you next time for another episode of your source for Linux Good News. Thanks again for watching. I'm Michael Tennell. I hope you're doing swell. Be sure to ring that notification bell. And until next time, I bid you farewell.